Welcome, everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behavior International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another identity conversation. And I have the great pleasure to have with me Jason Williams, who is the CEO and founder of the Aspire movement, which is a not-for-profit organization. He's based in Alabama, and he's doing some great work in helping youths 18 to 25, particularly boys, find out who they are, identify their talents, and get on the right path, if you want to call it that, for life. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me, Hugh.
So Jason, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your life and career background and how you got to this place of starting the Aspire movement?
Yeah, absolutely. The quick way I like to share my story is through three words: hypocrisy, hedonism, and hope. So the hypocrisy for me was kind of starting out in a professing Christian home, but really seeing a lot of hypocrisy, seeing a lot of self-righteousness, and really not grace, mercy, love, and things that I've come to know about the faith. So for me, it really began to shape me in negative ways around understanding my identity, purpose, and destiny in this life. But by the time my parents had separated, they divorced, I was living without a dad, and I really pursued hedonism, which I look back on. It's really a way to try to escape your situation and your circumstances. You try to find as many pleasures in the world that will make you feel good, because you think if you get enough of those, you'll feel significant. And really, the further I went down that road, the greater the consequences were. And I was arrested and charged with felony drug trafficking, which was a pivotal moment in my life, but I still didn't change. Thankfully, I'm 6'7", so I was given opportunities in basketball scholarships, and eventually that landed me in Birmingham, where I went to Birmingham Southern College and graduated there. But the most important thing about my college experience and living in Alabama was I was introduced to hope, and that came by way of my wife, who I've known now for 25 years, been married 20 in August. And the authentic relationship that she had with God and the understanding that she had, her humility, her forgiveness, her meekness, really just caused me to question my identity and my purpose, and really what does all this mean? What is all this here for? And I came to realize that the reason I was really dissatisfied and disillusioned with life was because I was cut off from the one who created me. God had created me with a purpose. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and there are experiences that he allowed me to go through to shape me. And so I just needed to get connected to him. And when I did, I immediately found that the things that I desired for my life were starting to be less and less important. And the things that I was learning about others and about being able to advocate for marginalized became more of a passion and a desire for me.
Wow, it's an amazing story. And firstly, Jason, thank you for being so honest with every part of it, because I think this is really part of the journey of helping other boys that you're helping with their journey. The first thing is they've got to get real with themselves, haven't they?
That's right.
But there's something that really struck me there, because as I was saying to you before we started the call, I was also a boy without a father, and so I understand some of this, and my life journey with that has been different to yours. Everybody's got a unique journey, but I think so much of this is about finding your identity, and that can become challenging when you don't have a dad there. Now, it can be challenging also if you're living in the shadow of your dad's identity. And I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about that, who wants to get some help from me, because he's got a very well-known dad, and this man's working in the similar market to his dad. So it's there's always comparison and all that stuff. But the thing that really struck me, it was around setting boundaries, because what somebody said to me about 20 years before I started my own real sort of digging into the impact of not having a father was this cousin of mine said to me, Hugh, he said, your dad would be so proud of you, but you missed out on a lot. And the big thing is you don't have the man influence around the house and no one to set boundaries for you. Now, in some ways, I had a strict mother and a grandmother that was a good role model, but I don't know that they set boundaries, and they can't, because it's just, some of it's physiological. It's a whole lot of issues at stake there.
Right.
But it seems to me that with your journey and where you got yourself to with hedonism, that you didn't have help either on setting boundaries. And I think that's just part of this, and that in some ways you've got to learn to find where are you going to get the boundaries set for you, or how are you going to set them?
And you especially need that when you come to find out you're a risk-taking pioneer who not only do you think outside the box, there is no box. What box?
Well, that's the thing for me. And, absolutely those dimensions in my DNA style are off the charts, and yours are extremely strong. Both of us are initiators and very hardwired on the edges of the behavioral style. And it's interesting we're having this conversation today, Jason, when we're so similar in style. And yeah, when you are a very goal-driven pioneer, risk taker, and you're also extremely creative, anything can happen. But there's tremendous strengths in that, but they need to be harnessed.
Right.
So it is interesting. So how do you feel like you've harnessed yours?
Yeah, I think surrounding myself with leaders who think a little differently than I do, that can help me see angles that normally my personality would not see.
Yeah.
And people that you trust too, being around you, because the worst person for me to be around is the compliant accountant that crosses every box off. And because I'm not wired in that way of so many details, I'm always thinking big picture, that I need translators around me too, because I feel like sometimes people have really good ideas, but the way that I hear it, I just may completely miss it. So being aware, obviously being aware of my strengths as a risk taker, as a pioneer, and having some what I would call like guardrails, accountability and people around that I can bounce ideas off of, and make sure that the trajectory that I'm on is a good one.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting that you bring up the accounting analogy, because I once upon a time was a CPA, or in Australia we call it chartered accountant. And it is a very structured environment. And I think in the end, I got out of it after 10 years of it, and I was pretty good at it. I think I'm better at other things, but I was pretty good at it. But I was like a caged tiger. And there's a lot of, the structure that's there. And I think that if you have coaches and mentors in your life that all they're going to do is lock you up and say, that here's the boundaries and you can't step over this. I don't think that works for someone like you and me. We've got to understand a bit of cause and effect. I think it's more being shown what are the options. Jason, if you do X, this might be what happens. Are you prepared to do that or take that chance? All right, okay. If you do this, it's illegal. So that's where you've got to stop. But you and I with our styles are really about testing every boundary in life,
right.
Because that's the only way we can grow. You're destined to grow pretty big with something, and the last thing it can happen is that you be, a caged up tiger. But but knowing what the boundaries are and the blind spots is also important. So that's where the right coaching team around you, or I call it life support team, is important. I have a raft of different people around me for different areas. You know,
I've also had to learn, Hugh, I have to, because I'm such a strong leader and I'm such a strong vocal communicator, and I come across with a lot of passion and assurance, that I've had to work extra hard to invite people in to bring those options, because naturally people don't, they don't want to pour any water on your parade, and you know, they don't want to tell you, hey, well, have you thought about this, have you thought about that? So I have to go an extra step in inviting that critique, or inviting those options in.
Yeah, I think the best way is is actually through experience sharing. And something I've learned from being part of a group called Entrepreneurs Organization for the past 24 years is sharing experiences and stories, essentially, with the experience helps people see it better, and then they can make their own decision, because people like you and me will want to make our own decision.
That's right.
We could learn from the experience of others that might have been in a similar situation.
Right.
I think that's why, you know, in doing your work with Boys Without Fathers, it's so important that for the boys to understand that Jason's been through this, and here's your set of experiences. It's not the same as everybody else's, but his experiences. And I think it's a lot of this is modeling character and you know, what's the right thing to do as a leader. And for the kid, for you and me, you know, I sort of look for role models out there and see, okay, what people are doing most things right.
Right.
And I work on emulating that. And I think that's the same for helping, you know, other kids. What do you and I do? And that's why to model character, doing the right thing for others to follow.
Right. That's good.
Not everybody will resonate with what you or I do, but if it's done, you know, within a framework. But I think for people to see Jason Williams out there from your background out there, getting past it and leading others to their greatness, because you're on that journey too. That's the thing.
That's it. And I mean, one of our core philosophies is modeling. It's more is caught than taught. And you have to, it's not just going to a whiteboard and telling people what character is and what integrity and wisdom and values. It's actually them seeing you when you're in pressure situations. And I've even learned, even when I'm in a pressure situation where I don't handle it the right way, going back to those young people and asking them and then sharing the lessons that are learned in that, and being vulnerable and transparent, and you know, constantly letting them know, look, we're not perfect. There's not a perfect standard of measure that we're ever going to achieve and attain, but we're growing, and it's about progress. It's about purpose. It's not about perfection. But that comes from relational capital and building trust, and then, you know, being willing to learn. I you know, young people have to give you their heart for you to teach them. You can't just show up and start teaching. You can, but they might not get much out of it.
Yeah, and I think there's a few things in there that's important. I think you out of your initiator style, and I've, as I said, it's pretty similar for me. Resilience is one of the strongest elements that come out of it, from being, you know, very fast paced. You can be extremely logical, but it's, in a way, it's how you turn lemons into lemonade a little bit with life experiences and you know, resetting them and showing people, okay, you made a mistake or you had a difficult situation, but here's how to turn that into an opportunity in your mindset. That's the big thing. And then ultimately, you know, to live your dream, you know, is to help them create space.
Right.
to discover what those dreams are, and that, you know, there's a reality to them, and they can live it if they want to.
That's right.
That, you know, I think that's what's you know, exciting about all of this, Jason. But, you know, in terms of, you know, pulling this together a little bit more, in terms of your identity and how you want to be seen in the world, remembered, you know, you've done a lot of great things, but you're a human being, how you want to be seen going forward, in terms of your own identity, you know, what do you think that is? Or how would you express it?
Yeah, I've put a lot of time and thought into legacy. And I think the older you get, the more you think about your identity, your purpose. What are you going to leave? Is anybody going to remember you? You know, one of the vivid reminders for me was I never fully reconciled with my father, but I went to his funeral, and there were 10 people there.
Yeah.
I don't want that for my life. I want there to be thousands of people there. And I don't want that from a selfish standpoint of look at him and what he accomplished. He was so great. No, actually, people know what I've come from.
Yeah.
And they know that the things that I've accomplished and the amount of people that I've influenced is beyond my pay grade, and the glory goes to God, not me. But there's visible fruit behind a life of influence. And I think God has blessed me with leadership. I'm 6'7". When I walk in a room, I have a deep voice. Somebody asked me last week, do you think leaders are born or are leaders made? And I said, both. I think there are natural born leaders, and I think there's the gift of leadership. And I think God has granted me the gift of leadership.
Yeah.
But anybody can learn how to be a leader, because leadership is influence, and you want to influence your home, you want to influence your classroom at school, you want to influence the company you work for, you want to influence the neighborhood, you know, baseball, youth sports team. Like you have so many leadership platforms that come without a title. And those are the ones that we tend to overlook. And so, yeah, I mean, I've always been enamored with leadership, military leadership, strategic leadership, visionary leadership. And I'm grateful that I feel like that was something that God had placed in me. And I want to try to use that influence to impact thousands of young people that at the end of the day, they just say, somebody cared about me.
Yeah.
Somebody cared about me enough to take the time and to try to help me understand what I'm good at and what I like to do. And they set me on the right path. And I've learned, you know, too, that at the end of my journey, I'm going to be judged on faithfulness, not fruitfulness. I am not the one that's responsible for growing fruit. I'm the one responsible for being faithful to garden it, to tend to it, to pray for water, to pick it when it's ready, you know, and to walk away and those kind of things. So I feel like I'm batting somewhere between 0 and 1,000 effectiveness on on creating a legacy.
So let's take it, though, that, you know, you are a leader, and clearly you are, and you know, you're building the Aspire movement, and you're going to bring a lot of kids, youths along behind you, and, you know, show them the right way. But if we just delve back into your you know, your DNA style a little bit, but also address it from the lens of what is your X factor? What makes you different as a leader to other leaders out there, other leaders of youth, you know, growing men of influence?
Yeah.
What do you think makes you different in that?
I'm willing to fail, and I don't see failure or making mistakes or trying something and it doesn't work the first time. I've never really seen negative in that. And I think a lot of people are wired where maybe they don't want to look bad, or they have these various filters that they don't want to be vulnerable to put themselves in a position to hear no, or take the kind of risk that it takes. And I think that, to me, and that's always been every assessment that I've ever done has always kind of brought in that risk-taking, pioneering factor. And I think that really is the X factor. That's the difference between somebody, going to mentor a kid with an organization that exists and starting a program that doesn't exist. I think that X factor is what, caused me to take an idea and then materialize it into an organization that has impacted over 1,000 kids in the last 12 years and has built a really strong board of directors and has impacted a lot of people in this community. And I mean, you think about, changing one person's life and how many people that young person might change going into the next generation. But I also, I've also seen that the X factor for me, and I want to look at this from a little different slant, Hugh, is I've also identified that the number one X factor for derailing me is my impatience.
Yeah.
And my very natural inclination to step on people to get the task done. I will use people to get the objective completed, because in being a pioneer and being groundbreaking, you want to build it. And so my natural proclivity is to dismiss people, or to be impatient, to not gather enough information to maybe make a more informed decision. I'm very rapid in my decision making.
Yeah.
And so that impatience is also, I kind of look at that as an X factor. Not that I'm ever going to become the world's most patient person, but it's good to know that you can kind of pause sometimes in those major decisions, or when you're dealing with conflict, that you need to back up and remember that naturally you're impatient. You want it done right now, and you want a conclusion today, and you might need to tarry and labor a little bit. And man, I'm telling you, that's hard for me to do. I'd love to know how you handle that, because I'm sure impatience is probably one of your weaknesses as well.
Well, impatient, yes. And I think the strength of it is that you can be extremely rational, logical, incisive in your thinking. Your brain will operate pretty quickly. The risk is that you could crush a relationship that you may not mean to. What I've learned is, though, with it is time tells you a lot of things, and often I sense the problem, or even not know the problem intuitively, a long way ahead of time. But it's then allowing time for it to bubble up a bit more, or for a fact to get confirmed. I teach people to go and get some external evidence from somewhere.
Yes. And,
build that into your process. But not to crush or shut down your own ability to make quick decisions either. Because as an entrepreneur, which in a way you are an entrepreneur,
right,
got all the traits of them. You started an organization from scratch with a vision. That's there. You need to be able to make quick decisions, or respond to a difficult situation quickly. And the people around you need to understand that is what may be going on too. And so I think it's, as much as you've been transparent about your life journey, and particularly the area around hedonism, is to be transparent about this, right? With the team, allow time when time can be allowed, because sometimes the situations sort themselves out, or the other person or the situation just disintegrates anyway.
Right.
And you don't need to play the heavy hand. But I think coming back to your X factor being, pioneering, risk-taking. In fact, you're also creative. So you're a leader and you're fast-paced. There's no doubt about that. But how have you brought the pioneering, which is, being goal-driven, competitive, persistent, the risk taking, prepared to go on a ledge potentially,
Mhm.
do something different, and you know, and you've created something different. How's that being brought to bear? Because I think that's where your X factor sits. So just it's just going one more layer deeper behind those traits, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely.
How do those traits exactly show up?
Yeah, so here's a great example. When we started the Aspire movement, our vision is multiplying leaders through mentoring. So
Yeah,
mentoring is the platform for us to multiply leaders. Who are our leaders? Our leaders are mentors and our kids. Our kids are going to be future leaders. So our main platform was just life on life. It was one-on-one mentoring. It was for 9 years. It was you step into the life of a fourth grade 9-year-old and you mentor them until they graduate high school. And then you've created lifelong sustainability, friendship, advocacy. Well, it's a great vision, but this year, Hugh, we graduated our fourth group of kids, high schoolers that started with us as 9-year-olds. So
yeah.
now
So you've got them at the right age.
so we got them young, and now we've seen them, and we've seen now 4 years of high school graduates. And because of that, another problem kind of came up. And what was that problem? Well, kids were going to college and dropping out in the first semester or the first year because either they didn't have the resources, they didn't really understand why they were going to college. They didn't go because they wanted to be a doctor or attorney. They went because somebody was telling them that college was the next step. So for us in seeing, and you've got that issue, and then another big issue is kind of the workforce development in the state of Alabama. The need for tech and trade is huge. There's a shortage of workers in those areas. Being a risk-taking pioneer said, hey, here's a problem. Here's a problem in our industry, in our workforce. Here's a problem within our mentoring, population community of students. Let's come up with a solution and create a program of a holistic residential apprenticeship for them to live, for them to discover who they are using DNA behavior, exposing them to many careers in those areas of tech and trade, developing their soft skills, their coping skills, their character development through modeling and teaching and coaching, but then deploying them, partnering with local companies and giving them internships and apprenticeships for them to then grow and really see, hey, is this the kind of job, or is this the kind of culture I want to work in? Am I a generalist? Am I a specialist? Am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? And Hugh, most of our kids, when we use these words, they don't even know what they are. They don't even know what an introvert and an extrovert is. So the ability to really, synthesize information and give it to them contextually is just part. And again, we bid off a $10 million building campaign last year to purchase and renovate a residential apprenticeship program, and it didn't happen yet. I didn't go die in a pile. I'm going to continue to push the vision. And I think that's where that X factor comes in of creativity, being able to, okay, maybe there's some things that we need to fix in our presentation. Maybe we're not presenting this with enough insight. We need to take the feedback we're getting from potential donors and think through this and crystallize and come back again and solve these problems. So I think that pioneer, risk-taking, creative, all that is kind of worked into. Hugh, I thought I just was an initiator of starting organization, and I didn't think I could sustain it. I always thought my role would be to come in and just plant, and then 3 years I go do something else. And I think the real, kind of light bulb moment for me was, you can be innovative within your own organization.
Yes.
As long as you keep the vision, the mission vision at the forefront of what you're doing, undergirded by your values and things that that you make your decisions based on these values. Once those guardrails are set, I can be creative as I want. And as long as it really fits into multiplying leaders through mentoring, then we can do it. And so that's been the real fun for me is just because I'm sustaining an organization, I don't even look at it that way. I look at it as I am still kind of I'm the CEO, but I'm also the chief executive of creativity within our group. And that means even bringing my team in and letting them dream and letting them share ideas about things that may better mentoring or may better support the relationships and things that we're doing. So for me, it's always pioneering. It's always taking the next risk. It won't end until there's probably no air left in my lungs.
So what do you see is stronger for you, though? Is it the mentoring of the kids? So the multiplying leaders is really multiplying. The leaders are the boys that are going from 9-year-olds to 18-year-olds to out into the community to become a leader, and in my terms, a man of influence.
Yes.
But do you see your role? Do you see your X factor more in the mentoring of the leader and multiplying them, or is it the organizational structuring and development? Because if I look at it like in a DNA behavior sense, Hugh Massie is the founder of our business. Has built the business structure, IP, insights, and there's facilitation that goes on. But my gift may not be necessarily being the trainer, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So there's other areas of the business that I'm better at, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I find myself better at vision casting, 30,000 feet, public speaking, leadership development of the team. So I want to invest in my team, who then invest into the mentors, into the students. From a organizational systems and processes, that's not my strong suit. But what I did is, I know I'm a visionary, so I hired an integrator, somebody who is very much more on the logistical, strategic process side of our organization, and he kind of acts as our as my COO. So I feel like we have the necessary components where I don't have to focus on organizational structure and development as much, because that's not what I'm good at, and I can just pour my investment time back into the ministry work itself, actually.
Yeah, so more of your time is actually on the ministry side of this, is actually of mentoring.
Correct.
The young leaders. And how do you reference them in the business? The kids, students that you're turning into leaders?
Yeah, we call them student leaders.
Yeah.
From the day that they come into our program, they're student leaders, because we know we want them to understand that they can lead in their classroom, they can lead at the house, and that leading at the house is not, telling your little sister what to do. It's actually taking the plates off of the table and washing dishes and taking out the trash and doing things to serve, your mom, your grandmother, your uncle, whoever it is that is your parent or guardian. Realizing that, leadership is service. And I think that's kind of what turned my world upside down. I've always been a leader. I just was a bad leader.
Yeah.
And I learned that bad leadership works. Good leadership works, but so does bad leadership works. If the blind lead the blind, they both go in a ditch. Bad leadership works. But it came for me to understand that leading is actually being the chief servant, that my job in leading means I'm really supposed to lead the people around me, and that I am to put them in the best position with their gifts and talents, their DNA behavior, put them in the right spots where they can excel and do the things that they love to do, that they get significance in doing. And that's what really gets me pumped up. And that's what gets me out of bed every day is having the autonomy to not only find the right people, but to make sure that we're putting them in the right positions that I can't do, positions that maybe I can, but I would be very marginal at it. It wouldn't move our organization forward. And then helping each team member understand that what you're doing is bringing enormous value. You're involved in the success and wins. You who are doing the, financials of our organization, putting together donor receipts and things like that. It's just it's as much of a part of the whole goal as everything else. And I enjoy that aspect a lot.
So, Jason, what do you think is how do you position the end state for these boys that, some of them have started with you when they're 9 years old in grade 4, and they're now out there 9 years later, they're out there in the community. How do you sort of describe them as they graduate, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important thing is that they know God. That's our number one goal and objective. Now, we can't make any of them do that, and not all of them will, but that's
Yeah.
not up to us. But number two, that they know who they are, that they're confident in their identity, that
Yeah.
they understand that God has given them an identity that they don't have to work for or earn, but they also have been given gifts and specific wiring in that they can learn more about their cultural identity and how that works out. So their God-given identity doesn't negate their other identity. It actually, I think, infuses and informs it. But ultimately, we want our kids to be mentors. That's the big win for us, Hugh. It's that if you come to me in 20 years and say, hey, how many mentors do you have now that came out of your student population? And I can only show you one or two. I think we failed at what we're trying to do, because that's not multiplying leaders through mentoring.
Yeah. So in a way, it's multiplying student leaders to be mentors.
That's correct.
That is, we come back to that, and it's sort of, it's a circle, because you're mentoring student leaders to be mentors.
That's right. And I think somebody else did this too very well. His name was Jesus. He had a model of investing in 3 and 12, and then they multiplied, and here we are 2,000 years later. It's still happening.
Yeah. So the mentoring part is a very strong thing for you, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
that's
really where your gift is. So when you're saying, that, while the integrator in the business is running the rest of the operational issues, you getting in there and being the lead mentor, is the key thing.
That's it. And I have 7 boys ages 9 to 22 and everywhere in between that I've started working with all of them at 9 years old.
And so, is there anything about the mentoring that you do in the way you do it that's, you would call unique? It's a different.
Yes. Our philosophy of mutual transformation sets us apart. And what I mean by that is most mentoring programs come across as the mentor is the one that's the sage, that has wisdom, that has experience, and the student is just the learner. And so it becomes very one-directional. It becomes very transactional. And quite frankly, that kind of philosophy has destroyed the kind of kids that we work with, because they need their dignity affirmed as young men who have something to offer. And so what we do through mentoring is we remind mentors that, yes, your experience matters, your wisdom, all of those things, but you're also entering into a new community. Sometimes you're crossing over socioeconomic and ethnic barriers, and you've got a lot of biases that you already operate with and things that you think are right, that through this relationship, some of your unconscious bias is going to be exposed. Some of the things that you felt for years. I'll give you a quick example, Hugh. We had a mentor that came to me that he worked very hard, 2-parent home, but he did it. He did a lot of things, and he always thought people were poor just because they were lazy. And when he witnessed the mother of the child that he's mentored for 4 years burn up his birth certificate and social security card right in front of him and basically tell him, I wish you were never alive.
Oh.
You start to realize that there's a lot more factors than just a kid being lazy. There's various levels of trauma. And so for us, the transformation happens because guess what? We're multiplying student leaders, but we're also multiplying these mentor leaders, because now this mentor who has a place of influence and power within his company is beginning to gain a new perspective about life that now he's sharing. And so all of a sudden he's outside of the bounds of Fox News and CNN, and he actually has drawn a nuanced conclusion around some of these issues, which I think happens in interpersonal relationships. So I really think the mutually transforming aspect, like Hugh, we partner with you, and we believe Aspire and DNA Behavior are very like-minded, and it's mutually beneficial. We believe that we are going to benefit from your platform, the ways that you guys have understood personality and the things that you can put together for us. And we think you're going to benefit because it's the product that you're producing and championing that's changing kids' lives in Birmingham, Alabama. You know, here's Hugh from Australia, changing kids' lives in the poorest zip codes in Birmingham, Alabama. And to me, that's mutually transforming. That's benefit for both of us. That it's not, I don't just pay you and we're getting a service. It's the fact that we're relationally engaged and we think highly of one another, that, hey, this is an exchange where we're both bringing things to the table that are going to have significance for us far beyond when you and I leave this planet.
Yeah, so the mutual transformation is a very, deep core value, and deep core value in the process.
Yes.
But I think your identity out there is the one step up is the multiplying of leaders to be mentors.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah. And that really is, at the end of the day, is your identity.
I agree.
Yeah. So Jason, as we wrap up, is there just one thing that you would like to say to our listeners? A word of wisdom, word of inspiration?
Yeah, I think far too often we limit ourselves based off of what we don't know about ourselves. And I think what DNA Behavior does is it unlocks and gives you real tools to help you discover and understand more of how you're naturally wired. And for me, it's also brought into play areas of my spiritual journey where, just because naturally I'm impatient and I step on people to accomplish tasks, well, guess what? I'm also indwelt with the Spirit of God, so I can overcome impatience and I can learn to esteem others higher than myself. So I have the tools, but the assessment gave me those strengths and weaknesses for me to be able to identify. And then I'm a practitioner to how does this practically then work out in my everyday life in all of these scenarios?
Yeah, I think that's very good insight, and what DNA really does at the end of the day is help you be conscious of what those great hardwired talents are, and then you become, from being conscious, you become aware, and then you manage it.
That's it. That's it.
All right, Jason. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It's been fantastic. It's awe-inspiring, actually.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, Hugh, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and just wish you continued success as we work together.
Absolutely. It's collaboration.